The first descent felt like slipping through stained glass. Dr. Ilara Mendez watched the Belize barrier reef dissolve above her viewport in prismatic greens and molten golds as the research submersible Calyptra angled downward. Sunlight fractured through coral buttresses and swayed across the hull like living calligraphy. "Depth 40 meters, said Thomas at the helm. "Reef crest behind us." Ilara adjusted the recorder at her collar. "Begin log. Target species, anomalous gymnothorax variant reported by local divers. Length estimated 3 meters. Unusual dermal luminescence. Possible new subspecies." She tried to keep her tone clinical, but the footage she'd reviewed the night before refused to sit quietly in her mind. The eel in the diver's video hadn't simply swum, it had observed. Its eyes had tracked the camera with unnerving deliberation, and just before the clip ended, a second shape had moved behind it, taller, vertical, not fish-like, humanoid. The reef slope steepened beneath them, coral architecture giving way to limestone escarpment. Sunlight thinned into a diluted haze. "Dropping past recreational depth," Thomas murmured. "Continue," Ilara said. She had spent her career mapping bleaching events, cataloging reef resilience, studying how climate stress reshaped fragile ecosystems. But this felt older. At 70 meters, they saw the first eel. It slid from a crevice like liquid muscle, body thick as a fire hose, skin shimmering faintly turquoise beneath the sub's lights. "There," Ilara breathed. The eel hovered rather than darted, mouth opening and closing in slow respiration. Its teeth were needle-fine, translucent. Then it did something no moray she'd studied had ever done. It straightened, not fully vertical, but enough. Its body coiled downward while the upper third lifted, aligning toward the sub's viewport. "Watching, recording," she whispered. The eel's skin pulsed faintly with bioluminescent tracery, thin lines running along its flank in deliberate patterns. Signal patterns, not random flashes. Behind it, shadows shifted. More eels emerged from the limestone wall. 5, 10, all unusually large, all orienting toward the submersible. Tomas cleared his throat. "This is coordinated." Ilara nodded slowly. "Descend another 10 meters. The limestone shelf ended abruptly at 90 meters, plunging into a vertical blue chasm. The eels followed, not darting aggressively, escorting. The sub's lights cut into the drop-off, revealing something that made Ilara's breath falter. The wall wasn't purely geological. Sections had been hollowed, smoothed, corridors carved into the limestone, edges rounded not by erosion but by deliberate shaping. And within those corridors, movement. Long shapes, but thicker than the eels above, broader through the shoulders. Ilara leaned closer to the viewport. One emerged. It did not undulate like a fish. It unfolded. The upper half of its body was distinctly humanoid, torso elongated but defined, arms tapering into webbed fingers tipped with curved keratin hooks. Its skin bore the same luminous tracery as the morays, but more complex, branching filaments that shimmered in layered rhythms. Below the waist, its body narrowed into a powerful eel tail, coiling effortlessly against the current, its head tilted, large eyes, lidless and reflective, fixed on the sub. Thomas whispered, "That's not evolution." Ilara's pulse thundered in her ears. The humanoid eel creature drifted closer. Its skin pulsed once, twice. Behind it, others emerged from the limestone apertures, dozens. They did not swarm, they arranged, forming a crescent around the submersible. The original moray eels hovered above them like sentinels. "Ilara," Thomas said quietly, "we should ascend." But Ilara couldn't look away. The lead humanoid extended one arm. Its webbed hand pressed lightly against the sub's glass dome. The contact was gentle, exploratory. Through layers of reinforced acrylic, Ilara felt the faintest vibration, like a distant cello string resonating underwater. The creature's luminous patterns intensified, rippling along its torso in intricate sequences. "It's communicating," she whispered. "How?" Thomas demanded. She stared at the pulsing lines. "They're not random bioluminescence. They're structured." The pulses shifted rhythm, repeating intervals, pauses, repeats, like syntax. The morays above echoed the pattern in simpler bursts, a hierarchical display. The humanoid leaned closer to the viewport, its mouth parted slightly, not in threat, in curiosity. Behind it, the carved limestone corridors extended deeper into blue shadow, descending beyond the reach of their lights. Alara's chest tightened. "This reef isn't just habitat," she murmured. "It's architecture." The creature's eyes narrowed faintly, as if recognizing comprehension. Then, from deeper within the chasm, something vast shifted. "A pressure." The creature's eyes narrowed faintly, as if recognizing comprehension. Then, from deeper within the chasm, something vast shifted. A pressure wave rolled upward, rocking the sub gently. The crescent formation tightened. The luminous patterns across their skin synchronized instantly. Tomas gripped the controls. "That's bigger than anything up here." The humanoid at the glass turned its head toward the abyss, listening. Then it looked back at Alara. Its bioluminescent tracery flared brilliantly, and the limestone wall behind it began to open. The limestone did not crumble. It parted. Segments of rock irised outward along concealed seams, revealing a vaulted chamber beyond the reef wall. The edges were smoothed into organic curves, calcified over centuries, perhaps millennia. Light pulsed from within, not harsh, but tidal. A breathing illumination that expanded and softened in slow cadence. The crescent of humanoid eel beings shifted aside, making space. Thomas's voice was barely audible. "We are not going in there." Alara didn't answer. Her recorder was still running. Inside the chamber, vertical pillars of coral limestone composite rose from the seafloor to the ceiling, each etched with luminous filaments. The tracery running along the beings' bodies echoed those same designs, like living extensions of the architecture. "This isn't random bioluminescence," Alara whispered. "It's infrastructural." The lead humanoid withdrew its hand from the viewport and gestured inward with a slow arc of its arm. Invitation. A second pressure wave rolled outward from the abyss below, heavier this time, not hostile, summoning. From deeper shadow beyond the chamber's threshold, something immense stirred, a silhouette broader than a whale, yet elongated, coiling through darkness with deliberate gravity. The eel being's skin pulsed in unified cadence, faster now, but not panicked, reverent. Thomas's hands trembled slightly on the controls. "If that's territorial—" "It's not," Alara said quietly. She didn't know how she knew, but the formation around them felt ceremonial, not defensive. The massive silhouette advanced into faint visibility. Segments of its body glimmered with layered bioluminescent constellations, patterns far more complex than the others. Its upper form suggested humanoid proportion, but magnified and ancient. Fins arched from its shoulders like translucent banners. Its elongated lower body coiled through the chamber's central void. When its face resolved in the glow, Alara forgot to breathe. It was not monstrous. It was venerable, eyes vast and reflective, lined with fine ridges that suggested age beyond human reckoning. The being halted at the chamber's center. Every lesser eel humanoid lowered their torsos slightly in acknowledgement. The morays above retreated to the ceiling's edges, clinging to coral ribs like living chandeliers. The elder being regarded the submersible. Then it focused on Alara. The luminous patterns along its body shifted. Slower. Measured. A low-frequency resonance vibrated through the hull, not strong enough to damage, but strong enough to be felt in bone. Alara pressed her palm against the glass instinctively. The resonance altered, modulated. Thomas swallowed. "It's scanning us." "No," Alara said softly. "It's matching." The pulses along the elder's skin began aligning with her heartbeat, visible through subtle flickers that accelerated and decelerated in sync. Her breath hitched. The patterns were no longer just light. They were rhythm, communication not through language, but through entrainment. The elder extended one elongated hand toward the sub. Its fingers hovered inches from the viewport without touching, and in Alara's mind, not as a voice, but as a structured impression, came a cascade of images. Coral cities rising and collapsing across epochs. Ice ages lowering sea levels to expose their corridors to air. Ancient reefs bleaching and regrowing. Humans arriving with nets, with anchors, with steel, not conquest, observation, coexistence, until drilling, until seismic testing, until shock waves shattered inner chambers. The impression sharpened, fractures along limestone vaults, juvenile forms displaced, corridors collapsing. Alara's throat tightened. We've been destabilizing their inner reef systems, she whispered. Thomas stared at her. You're getting all that from blinking lights? Yes. The elder's luminous patterns shifted again. An image formed in her mind. Future projection. Dead reef, collapsed corridors, surface storms intensifying as ecological balance faltered. Then, another projection. Humans adjusting. Buffer zones established. Anchors relocated. Sound dampening implemented. Reef thriving. Shared stability. The elder's hand finally touched the viewport. The contact sent a soft, harmonic tone through the hull. Neither threat nor plea. Proposal. Ilara nodded slowly. I understand. The lesser eel humanoids shifted slightly, watching her. Thomas whispered, Understand what? They don't want us gone, she said. They want us quieter. The elder's luminous tracery brightened briefly at that. Confirmation. From the abyss below, a faint echoing vibration rolled upward, distant but powerful. Not all beneath the reef were as patient. The elder withdrew its hand. The chamber's limestone segments began closing gradually, the iris narrowing. Time was limited. Ilara leaned toward the microphone. Dr. Ilara Mendez, live log. Immediate recommendation. Establish no anchor zones beyond the reef crest. Restrict seismic mapping. Implement acoustic dampening protocols within a 10-kilometer radius. Thomas blinked at her. You think command will listen? The elder's gaze held hers steadily. They will, she said. The limestone iris narrowed further. The crescent formation began dispersing. Before the chamber sealed completely, the elder inclined its head slightly toward her, not subservience, recognition. Then the wall closed seamlessly, leaving only natural limestone in its place. The humanoid eel beings retreated into smaller corridors, their luminous patterns fading to faint glimmers. The oversized morays resumed ordinary reef behavior, weaving through coral as though nothing extraordinary had transpired. Within minutes, the chasm appeared untouched. Thomas exhaled shakily. We just discovered an entire civilization. Ilara kept her eyes on the limestone wall. No, she corrected softly. We rediscovered neighbors. Above them, sunlight filtered faintly down through 70 meters of Caribbean water, painting the reef in shimmering gold once more. But far below, beyond the visible coral gardens, ancient corridors pulsed with quiet light, waiting to see whether humanity would listen. The ascent felt heavier than the descent, not because of ballast, because of consequence. When Calyptra broke the surface, the reef shimmered in late afternoon brilliance. Tour boats skimming the outer crest, snorkelers scattering like bright confetti in shallow turquoise. Ordinary, painfully ordinary. Ilara removed her headset slowly. Transmit the log, she said. Thomas hesitated. All of it? She looked back at the water. Below that radiant shallowness, limestone vaults held breath older than civilization. All of it, she repeated. The first response from the Institute was predictable. Skepticism wrapped in procedural language. Bioluminescent aggregation behavior misinterpreted under stress. Possible nitrogen narcosis influencing cognitive processing. Recommend repeat descent with additional imaging support. Ilara read the message twice, then a third time. Her pulse remained steady. They're going to send a heavier sub, Thomas muttered. More lights, more sonar, and more noise, Ilara said quietly. As if summoned by the thought, her tablet pinged again. A private communique this time, from the Ministry. Energy Consortium requesting seismic mapping rights along the outer barrier. Your anomalous species report may affect permit allocation. Clarify findings. There it was, the real pressure, not scientific doubt. Commercial momentum. Ilara stepped onto the deck and scanned the horizon. The reef looked serene, deceptively resilient. She imagined seismic charges detonating along the shelf, shockwaves tearing through hidden corridors. The elder's projection resurfaced in her mind. Fractured vaults, displaced juveniles, deeper forces stirring in unrest. We need proof they can't dismiss, Thomas said. Ilara nodded slowly. Then we give them something measurable. 2 nights later, they returned, this time equipped with hydrophones calibrated to detect microresonance patterns and bioelectric field mapping arrays capable of translating luminous pulses into frequency data. They descended at twilight, when reef light dimmed and bioluminescence carried greater contrast. At 70 meters, the oversized morays appeared again, but they did not escort. They observed from a distance. At 90 meters, the limestone chasm waited, dark, closed. Alara swallowed. "We won't enter," she murmured into the external calm. "We're only listening." She activated the hydrophone array. For a moment, there was only ambient reef noise, shrimp clicks, distant fish movement. Then, a pulse, low, structured. The limestone wall shimmered faintly. The iris segments parted once more, not fully, just enough. Within, the chamber glowed softly. The elder did not emerge this time, but the lesser eel humanoids gathered within view. Their luminous patterns began pulsing in deliberate cadence. The hydrophone display lit up instantly. Waveforms scrolled across the monitor. Complex, layered oscillations repeating in structured intervals. "Patterned resonance," Tomas whispered. "It's not random. It's organized acoustic architecture." Alara nodded, heart racing. The pulses intensified, not louder, clearer. The limestone itself vibrated sympathetically, amplifying and distributing the signals through the reef matrix. A living communication grid. She initiated the bioelectric translation overlay. The luminous pulses mapped directly onto the acoustic frequencies, light and sound intertwined. The reef wasn't merely habitat, it was instrument. The eel humanoids modulated the structure itself to transmit across depth. Then, the elder appeared, not advancing fully, remaining within the chamber's threshold. Its luminous tracery flared once, slow and expansive. The hydrophone readings spiked into a new band of frequency, lower, heavier. From far below the chasm, an answering vibration rolled upward, massive, ancient. Tomas's face drained of color. "That's coming from beneath them." The elder's gaze shifted briefly downward, not fear, awareness. Alara felt the implication without translation. There were deeper strata of life beneath the reef civilization, and not all of it favored restraint. The elder's luminous patterns shifted toward her, slower, urgent. The hydrophone translated the pulses into structured intervals that her software began approximating into spectral data clusters. She stared at the forming visualization. It resembled stress mapping, fault lines, projected impact zones. The message crystallized: seismic detonation here, fracture there. Cascade collapse into deeper vaults. Release, not of water, of something contained. Alara inhaled sharply. "They're not just protecting themselves," she whispered. "They're containing something." The elder inclined its head. Confirmation. The deeper vibration rolled again, stronger. The chamber's light dimmed fractionally. The eel humanoids tightened formation. The elder's luminous tracery flared bright and rapid. A final pulse transmitted across hydrophones and bioelectric sensors simultaneously. Clear, unambiguous, quiet the surface. The limestone iris began sealing once more. The hydrophone readings faded as the chamber closed. The reef wall returned to inert stone. Thomas stared at the dark screen. "If the consortium sets off charges," Alara cut him off. "They won't." She looked at the scrolling data, clean, undeniable acoustic architecture mapped in high resolution, resonant patterns that could not be dismissed as hallucination, and beneath them, a deeper waveform, slow, patient, waiting. Back on the surface, as stars pricked the Caribbean sky, Alara transmitted the full data set to the Ministry, the Institute, and every regulatory board with jurisdiction over the reef. No embellishment, no speculation, just data, patterns, and the stress projections attached. Within 24 hours, the seismic permit request was suspended pending environmental reassessment. Within 72, the barrier reef received expanded acoustic protection status. Alara stood at the railing that evening, watching moonlight scatter across gentle swells. Below, hidden corridors pulsed in faint bioluminescent rhythm. The elder's civilization would endure, for now, but she understood something profoundly sobering. The reef was not fragile in the way humans defined fragility. It was layered, guarded, and beneath its luminous gardens lay thresholds that, once fractured, would not negotiate. The water lapped softly against the hull, and far below, in vaulted chambers of living limestone, ancient eyes remained open, listening for whether the surface would remain quiet. The quiet held. For 11 days, long enough for the reef to breathe easier, long enough for Alara to almost believe restraint might prevail. Then the tremor came, not a detonation, not a blast, a distant, exploratory seismic ping from a vessel beyond the protected perimeter. Legal, technically, a calibration pulse, but sound in water does not honor paperwork. The hydrophone buoy nearest the outer shelf spiked. Alara was in the lab when the alarm chimed, a low, oscillating tone she had programmed herself. Thomas looked up from the spectrograph. "Tell me that's a storm surge." She didn't answer. The waveform was narrow but forceful, focused energy. It traveled along the shelf edge and refracted downward, toward the limestone strata, toward the chasm. Her throat went dry. "Get the sub prepped," she said. Descent this time felt urgent. The water columns seemed denser, as if resisting them. At 60 meters, the reef fish were scattered, jittering in irregular bursts. At 80, the oversized morays were absent. At 90, the chasm wall was already open, not ceremonially, ripped. One limestone segment hung misaligned, fractured, along a pale seam. Inside, the chamber glowed erratically. The eel humanoids were in motion, swift, angular, their luminous tracery flickering in sharp staccato pulses instead of measured cadence. Distress. The elder was present, coiled higher than before, closer to the ceiling vault. Its bioluminescence was brighter, but unstable, like lightning trapped beneath translucent skin. Another tremor rippled through the water column, not from above, from below. The hydrophone screamed. A subharmonic vibration surged upward from beneath the chamber, vast and tectonic, rolling through the limestone corridors like something shifting its weight after centuries of stillness. Thomas gripped the console. "That's not structural feedback." "No," Alara whispered. "It's locomotion." The elder's gaze locked onto the submersible. Its luminous patterns flared in rapid succession. Not structured communication. Warning. The lesser eel beings swarmed toward deeper passageways, sealing side corridors with interlocking formations of their own bodies, reinforcing weakened seams. A fissure split along the chamber floor. From the darkness beneath, something vast exhaled. The water temperature dipped 2 degrees instantly. The hydrophone feed fractured into chaotic oscillations. Alara felt it in her molars, a bass note beyond hearing. A shadow rose through the cracked limestone, not serpentine like the elder, not articulated in choral grace. This was density incarnate, a colossal mass with ridged plates instead of skin, layered like abyssal armor. Bioluminescence pulsed beneath those plates, but not in patterns, in spasms. Eyes opened along its frontal arc, multiple, lidless, reflecting the sub's lights in a constellation of cold awareness. Thomas swore under his breath. That's what they were containing. The elder descended between the emerging behemoth and the submersible, not attacking, blocking. Its luminous tracery flared into coherent rhythm again, slower, deliberate, pacifying pulses. The abyssal entity paused. Its plates contracted slightly, grinding against one another with a sound like distant landslide. Another surface tremor echoed faintly through the water, small but sufficient. The abyssal creature's eyes brightened. The eel humanoids intensified their luminous output, sinking in unified resonance with the elder. The chamber walls vibrated, not from the monster, from the reef itself. The limestone vault began humming, amplifying the elder's cadence, reinforcing a harmonic frequency that pushed downward against the rising force. The abyssal entity recoiled fractionally, resisted. Alara's instruments began translating the harmonic into numerical bands. It wasn't just sound, it was pressure modulation, a containment field grown from architecture and biology intertwined. "Help them," Tomas breathed. "How?" Alara's eyes flicked to the sub's auxiliary sonar. "We can match the frequency. That'll overload our system. Then we burn the system." She rerouted the sonar output through the hydrophone translator, aligning the sub's acoustic emitter with the elder's harmonic band. "On my mark," she said. The abyssal entity surged another meter upward. The fissure widened. The water pressure spiked. "Now!" Thomas engaged the emitter. The sub vibrated violently as it expelled a focused harmonic pulse into the chamber, amplifying the reef's resonance. For one suspended second, everything aligned. Eel humanoids, elder, limestone vault, human machine, one frequency. The abyssal creature convulsed, its plates clamped inward. The multiple eyes dimmed. The fissure began sealing, not through repair, but through force. Compressed limestone grinding back into place. The behemoth descended slowly, reluctantly, retreating into the abyssal dark. The harmonic held until only silence remained. Then the chamber lights softened. The eel humanoids sagged in visible exhaustion. The elder hovered, luminous patterns flickering faintly. Alara's sonar system went dead, burned, but the water steadied. The temperature normalized. The limestone wall resealed, though cracks remained like pale scars across its surface. The elder turned its gaze toward the submersible once more. Not ceremony, not invitation, acknowledgement of shared effort. Then it withdrew into the chamber's depth. The iris closed. This time, it sealed imperfectly. Tomas leaned back, breath ragged. We just helped them keep a god asleep. Alara stared at the scarred limestone. No, she said quietly. We helped them keep a prisoner contained. Above them, beyond the water column, ships continued charting and mapping and drilling across the planet's oceans, unaware. Beneath the Belize barrier, ancient architects resumed their vigil, but now they were no longer the only sentinels listening for tremors in the deep.